Mike Owens with Inside Fighting, joined today by Kurt Holobaugh, who returns to action next Saturday night, facing Alexander Hernandez at UFC Fight Night. Kurt, great to sit down and chat for the first time. How are your emotions ahead of your return?
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. Emotions are good. Everything's good. Been training hard for this fight. Training for this fight has been really fun.
We were talking a little bit off camera about your fight at UFC 292 in Boston, but this is going to be your third fight in a row in the UFC Apex Center. How do you feel about fighting what is considered behind closed doors as opposed to a packed out arena?
It's not a problem for me. I sometimes I prefer to fight in the little small venues. Yeah, everybody likes to fight, and I do. Trust me, I like to fight in the big sold out arenas too. But the good thing about the Apex, man, they give family tickets now, so I can have my family sitting basically front row, cheer me on. I can hear everything they're saying. So and it's still a big fight card. You're still on ESPN, you're still in the UFC, you're still making the same amount of money as you would fighting in a big arena. So
Mm.
it's still fun.
How many tickets do you get assigned?
They give you 4 tickets.
And how is it decided who of your family or friends get those four tickets? Is it the same for people? Do you have to raffle them out, share them about? How does that work?
Sometimes I might have an extra one. When I fought Trey Ogden in my first fight back to the UFC, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
there was in the Apex. Um, Apparently they didn't give tickets yet. That was the first fight that they gave tickets to, so I didn't fly any of my kids out. My
Hmm.
wife was coming out anyways because she was just gonna go to somewhere find somewhere to catch the fight. And when I got there, they said, "All right, who gets your 4 tickets?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, we get tickets?"
Hmm.
Like I thought we didn't get tickets because I literally asked like several
Oh.
times because of course I always like to bring my kids.
Hmm.
And but yeah, you get tickets, but it's too late. My kids are at home now. What I can't fly them out there that quick. So, my wife was happy, but I brought my wife, my uncles, and my sister. So they got the tickets there. The last fight that we did at the Apex, I already knew I was getting the tickets. So my wife, my youngest son, my oldest son, and my coach's wife that was already out there. Got them. This time I'm bringing all of my kids, so all my kids will be there. My wife and my kids.
I saw a video on your Instagram, and I think it was of your 5-year-old son, and you were
Mhm.
being his pad man. I think he probably has a better backhand than me. He's throwing that with perfect technique. Is he training MMA? Is the plan for him to maybe one day fight or follow in his father's footsteps?
Yeah, hopefully, man. He's grown up inside a gym. I own 2 gyms, right down the road, basically. And since day one, when he was born, the next day we brought him to the gym, put him in a crib, and went back to work. So he's basically grown up in a gym since he can walk. He's had a gi on training jujitsu. Um, when he was 3 years old, I put him in a jiu-jitsu competition, not expecting him to do very well, and he did amazing. He did so good. My wife posted a video on TikTok, and he's got like 30,000 TikTok followers now.
Well,
Um, so yeah, he's had a couple matches inside a cage doing jiu-jitsu. Um, so yeah, man, he's already came a long way, and I think he definitely wants to be a fighter. He wants to do an MMA fight. Every day he asks me if he could do an MMA fight. And then my 14-year-old, he fights Saturday night for a promotion in Baton Rouge at the LaBerge Casino called Titan Combat. This would be, I think, his 10th fight. So
well.
he's got a lot of fights as well.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, let's talk about your fight. As I mentioned, Alexander Hernandez is the next one up. Give me your scouting report on your next opponent. What you think he does well, and maybe some areas you're looking to exploit.
I think he does a little. He does a lot well. He's good on the feet. Um, Good wrestling, I guess you could say. Yeah, I think he's supposed to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so you can't sleep on his submission game. One mistake and he can catch you in something. But I think he's pretty good overall, and I think that's why this is gonna be so good of a fight. And I think it's gonna be a big test for myself. Definitely the biggest fight of my career. We both have some same mutual opponents. We both fought a couple guys, um, and we both lost to some. We both beat some. So. Um, I don't know, man. It's gonna be a good fight. I'm excited to test myself. Got to go out there and do what I do, and hopefully I can get this win.
There's a lot of wins on Alex's record. There's also quite a few losses in varying fashions as well. Is the one particular fight that you're looking at from his record that you think you can emulate and have success in that area?
Well, I mean, I think you can go back to the last fight that he fought Austin Hubbard. Austin's a guy that I fought
Mm,
in Boston, UFC 292.
mm,
And I think that was a very close fight. I think he had a little bit of trouble dealing with Austin's pressure. Um, and that was a very close fight. You could watch that fight 10 times, and you might say 5 times out of the 10, you might say, I think Alex won. 5 times out of 10,
mm.
you might say, you think Austin won. And I thought I beat Austin pretty decisively. I think I was um, doing the better work while the fight was still going. So we'll see. Every fight's different, though. So just because I was able to do something well against Austin doesn't mean I can do it to him. So I don't know. We'll see. I think it's a good fight stylistic for me. I've had a great training camp, I guess you can call it, for this fight, and we'll see, man. I'm always ready to test myself.
When you announced the fight on your Instagram, you captioned the post saying, "I'm looking forward to a war." Are you expecting that type of fight, and what makes you so adamant that it's going to be that type of fight?
Well, I think it's just my mentality. I always got to prepare myself for the worst fight possible. And
Mm,
even I told everybody after this, I said, don't plan me no after parties. I'm not planning to go out or do anything. I'm planning on probably being in the hospital because the way I want to fight this fight is going to be pretty violent, man. And I want to prepare like that. That way, you know, I'm prepared for the worst. When I go to the
mm.
hospital, I'm like, oh well, see, I told you I was going to the hospital, no after party. So yeah, man, I'm prepared to go in there and give it everything I got. If I got to break my hands, my legs, my feet, kicks and punches, then I'm gonna do that. But um, yeah, I'm always expecting a war. I'm always expecting it to be the toughest fight of my life every time I step in octagon.
You're still kind of early in this second run in the UFC. I think you mentioned 1-1. In my head, it was more 2-1, but I counted the Ultimate Fighter win
Yeah,
as
no,
a
it is
UFC win
definitely.
in some ways. But what do you feel like is on the line in this fight? Because as I mentioned, still kind of early in this second run. But what do you feel like is the key that you can get out of next Saturday night past just another win on your record?
Hopefully another chance to move up the rankings. You know, I mean, I want to keep fighting for as long as I can. I don't feel like I'm slowing down anytime soon. I feel like, if I'm being honest, I'm only getting better, and I think I'm starting to be a different version of a fighter, a more experienced fighter. And I even said this going on the Ultimate Fighter show. I feel like I'm more experienced for what I was back in my first UFC runs, but now I feel like I'm even more experienced, and I feel like I can fight with some big, high level fighters that are in the UFC, man. I want a ranking beside my name. I want to make it to a top 15 to a top 10 before I'm done. Um, and who knows, man? Hopefully make a lot of money on the way out.
How much did the experience of going through the Ultimate Fighter and ultimately winning that tournament not only do for you personally, but also improve in terms of your skill sets that you feel like you have?
I think it did a lot for it. It really showed that. First off, I want to say it showed that I'm on that level. It showed that I should be fighting in the UFC because that's always been my problem, right? I would get to the UFC and then I would fumble. I would drop some fights and then maybe I would get cut, or UFC would say, "Hey, all right, go back, win a couple fights, and then we'll look at you and bring you back." Well, I go on the outside and I beat everybody, right?
Yeah.
I've won world championships on the outside of the UFC. I do think I dropped 2 fights on the outside of the UFC, but if you take a look at who they were, one was the Andre Harrison who beat Lance Palmer for the World Series of
Yeah.
Fighting championship title,
Mm.
and then even went on in the PFL to win into some of the finals of the PFL, and he was undefeated. He was 20-0
Yeah.
before he finally lost. And I want to say he's still today 20-2. I mean, there's not many guys that got a solid record that's 20-2.
Mm.
And then the other one, I went over to Russia and fought in one of the number one Russians in Chechnya, Russia. So
Mm.
that's my only 2 losses outside of UFC, and I lost both fights by decision. It's not like they
Mm.
went in and killed me. Other than that, all of my losses are inside the UFC. So with that being said, like, I would go out and I'd beat everybody on the outside of the UFC, and I'm like, man, you know, I should be in the UFC. So when I got the phone call for the Ultimate Fighter, it made perfect sense. I'm like, okay, well, think about it. This is vets versus prospects. So if I can beat everybody outside the UFC, I should be able to beat these vets. And and ultimately that's what I was able to do, or
100%.
the up and comers.
Yeah, 100%. I want to quickly get your thoughts on the champion in your division, Islam Makhachev. There's a lot of talk about this potential super fight with Ilia Topuria moving up from 155 pounds to challenge Islam. How do you rate Ilia's chances in that potential fight if it were to happen?
Oh, I think you can't really count Ilia out. You see what he's done. He's kind of got, and this is the thing. Some of these guys come in the UFC, right, and they just have it. They have what it takes. They got the star power. They got the fighting abilities. You look at Connor. You look at Ilia. You
Mm.
look at a lot of these guys that have came in and done what they've done. You can't. Don't sleep on Ilia. I mean, as you see, He's been putting everybody to sleep
Mm.
in dramatic fashion. But let's not kid ourselves, man. Islam Makhachev, maybe we've seen him have one or two off nights in the UFC. One, he lost a fight, and then the other was Alexander Volkanovski, which was a very close fight, But other than that, he's been able to go out there and just make things look easy. And when guys can do that to such high level competitors like Dustin Poirier, like Hanato Morcano, you know, and all the other guys that Makachev has beat, you know, I give Ilya a chance, I do, but I wouldn't bet my money on it.
Would you rate Ilia as the toughest test for Makhachev, or do you look at other people at the top of this division and feel like they can give the champion more issues?
Oh man, I'm gonna say no. I don't think Ilya be at the toughest test. I think Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, um, Michael Chandler, those guys going to give Islam a little more than what I think is Ilya can.
You mentioned Dustin there, and you said off camera that you're fighting and training out to Louisiana. If this rumors Louisiana card happens in the summer for Dustin Poirier's retirement fight, I imagine, especially with the timeline of your next fight, that would line up perfectly for a homecoming fight for yourself as well.
Absolutely. I've been knowing about this fight that's coming to New Orleans for some time now, since um, probably right after my last fight last July. So, yeah, and already kind of been in talks with the UFC. I've already kind of let them know and let my manager knows, hey, man, look, listen, I have to be on this card. Like, it don't make sense to bring a card to your hometown when there's like five fighters fighting in Louisiana that are in the UFC. Like we should be on the card. So I kind of reached out and we had some talks with the UFC, even whenever we was working on this fight with Alex. And apparently they said, okay, well, does Kurt want to wait and fight New Orleans, or does he want to fight now? And I told him I wanted to fight now. Give me
Mm.
one before New Orleans. And they said, okay, well, how about this is what I got? I got Alexander Hernandez, and then fighting New Orleans. I'm like, perfect. All right, let's go out there and handle business first with Alexander,
Of
and
course.
then we'll move on to New Orleans and hopefully make that dream happen.
Would you have an ideal opponent in mind? I mean, I know you're not looking past your upcoming opponent, but would you have an ideal opponent in mind? And secondly, would you have a preferred opponent for Dustin Poirier's retirement fight? Who do you think would make the most sense for such a big and historic card in a market that the UFC haven't been to in such a long time?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I think a couple fights. I'll tell you a fight that I would like to see. I would like to see Dustin and Nate Diaz. I think that's a big fight. That was a fight that was supposed to happen years back. Whenever I fought Shane Burgos at Madison Square Garden, can't remember the UFC number,
Mm.
but Nate and Dustin were supposed to fight on that card too.
Yeah.
And then I think Nate or somebody got hurt, and Dustin or they pulled the fight, and you know, but I can still see that fight happening. But other than Nate, I think it'll be Max Holloway that's going to give Dustin that fight. So we'll see what happens there. For me, I don't really know, man. It's like I need to go out and I need to beat Alexander first, so
Mm.
I can show the UFC that I can beat and compete with some of the top guys in the UFC. Because if you look at Alex and you see what he's done, he's beaten top guys. He's beaten Dariush. He's beaten Jim Miller. You know, he's had some big fights. He's fought Cowboy, fought Marcano,
Mm.
fought Drew Dober, um, fought Tiago Moises. So we'll see, man. If I can get past Alex, we'll see what the UFC will throw at me. I would imagine they'll throw me somebody. It could be somebody, very close to the rankings.
100%. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for your time. Great to catch up. Have a great and safe rest of camp, and best of luck for the next fight.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.